Hello, I've got yet another Ford Escort diecast review for you. Now this is the RS1600i. I'm going to go through quite a bit of information about this car because although if you're a bit of a Ford fan you'll probably know exactly what this car is, but to the average layperson you might just think it's just another Escort XR3 or 3i. But this actual car was very different animal to the XR3 or XR3i or even the RS Turbo. This car was actually built for motorsport, for proper homologation. These were developed in Germany. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the original car. These were produced in the very early 80s. These were developed at the same time as Ford was still developing an XR3i, which was a fuel injected version of the XR3 performance model of the Mark III Escort. Whilst Ford in the UK were developing the XR3i by bolting on Bosch fuel injection to the basic XR3 to give it some much needed smoothness and a little bit of extra power, Ford in Germany were developing this car, which was a serious bit of motorsport kit. It was actually developed for touring car racing. They were made in quite limited numbers. They had some very unique features to this vehicle, and they had very little to do with the XR3i. Most people assumed it was an XR3i with a couple of extra spoilers and some fancy seats, but it couldn't be further from the truth. These cars did very well in racing, and they were sort of aftermarket turbo conversions, which were done on these cars almost from the factory, which were done before the following RS Turbo was even developed or even available to the general public. So I think Jan Speed used to do a turbo conversion on these cars, as well as Turbo Technics and a few other companies. But these were very quick little cars. They had quite a bit more power than the Escort XR3i, which had about 105 horsepower. This had 115. Now 10 horsepower doesn't sound like it would make any difference, but that's virtually 10% more power in a package which is the same weight, same dimensions. They had unique suspension, unique steering geometry, and they were just set up as a bit of a rough, sort of boisterous sort of rally car, race car for the road. So they were extremely good cars to drive if you were a bit of a hooligan. And this is a fantastic little model. I believe this one, which is made by Sunstar, like the other Escorts I reviewed, is the only 1/18 scale model of an RS1600 you can buy. Sunstar did these in various colours. I think they did a black version of this and a sort of laser blue colour, which I think are more or less all the colours these cars came in. No, actually I'm wrong, sorry. No, they did, the real car came in diamond white. I think there was a grey, there was definitely the blue, possibly silver, so actually quite a good range of colours. Now this one is the archetypal Ford Sunburst Red, but again a bit like the other XR3i I did a review on. The colour looks slightly redder than I think it would in real life. Maybe it's it doesn't look like it in the video, because in the video it looks quite bright, so it's difficult to see the actual real colour. But I think if you put it to alongside the real car, you probably notice a slight difference in shade. But it's got all the unique little features you would get on the RS1600i. So I'll run through all the little differences you'll see. So the first thing is, that's very obvious, is the wheels. You've got the same wheels you've got on the Mark III Escort RS Turbo, although on the RS1600i they had little RS badges right in the center cap of the wheel. I'm not sure if that came on the RS Turbos. I think the RS Turbos just had a Ford one. And this has actually got the RS logo, although it's very difficult to make out on camera. You've got the unique decals straight down the side. On the RS1600i you had no black trim around the windows. You did get that on the XR3i. They had a unique front spoiler, which only came on this car, didn't come on any other car apart from the RS1600i. On the front you had a brace of spot lamps. 2, not enough. On this one they gave it 4. I'm not quite sure why, but I think it looked really cool. Certainly made the car look quite different. Again, you've got the unique RS faded graphics on the bonnet, which looked really good, and you saw those spring up on lots of other Mark III Escorts where people are trying to replicate the look of these cars. And round the back you had a very unique spoiler, only came on this car again. So you've got unique front spoiler, and a totally unique rear spoiler, very, very different to the spoiler that came on the XR3s and RS turbos. You can see just how far that comes out. It's a very large spoiler with a big indentation at the back, so you had this kind of big rain trap here, but you can see from the back just how large that spoiler was. Really stuck out. Looks fantastic in the flesh, if you ask me, when you see the real car. They also had quite a noticeably different stance. They had a very, very firm suspension compared to the XR3i, and they generally rode quite low on the nose, and the back used to be up a little bit, so probably a bit more sort of like this if I push the nose down. Again, like the other cars, this has got suspension, so you can fiddle about with that if you want. You could lower it right down, make it look like a real bad boy Escort. I have toyed with the idea of removing the springs on this because I think it looks really good if you drop it right down. But yeah, I mean, I might just possibly just take out the front springs, just see what it looks like with the nose slammed down, because I think it does look really good with that front spoiler for sitting right down on the ground. I'm going to open up the car now and just show you the inside, because it has got a really faithful interior, just like the real RS1600i. So just bear with me a second. Now this is where I think you really get your money's worth on this car. So if we look at the under bonnet, it's very, very good. Now this is different to the XR3i models I reviewed, because the first thing I mentioned it in the last video, the battery. In this car, the battery is where I remember it was, on the right hand side. So right here. And the other models, the battery's over there, which I think is really odd, but I know in the Mark III Escorts and Mark IV Escorts, generally the battery is over here, where you've got that weak point where they just rust out, and virtually every Escort of that age has had a new battery tray or load of body filler slapped in there. Now this has actually got a really, really authentic looking engine, because the XR3i engine was the sort of standard CVH, so you've got the CVH sort of engine top cover here. This had a very unique one, so this kind of like grid sort of pattern on the top, which was like the motorsport head, I think, on these cars. I think they also had a 4-branch manifold, which was unique to the RS1600i. I think they came with a Kent camshaft as well, which is all the little things that added up to the extra horsepower. Plus, you had a twin coil system. Now, I don't know if that is an accurate sort of representation of the twin coils, but they did have down here sort of a twin coil system from new, so I can't remember exactly what that looked like, but you've got something certainly very different looking down here compared to the XR3i models, plus with the engine cover on the top, the manifold, that's very, very close to what the real thing looked like. So again, really, really fantastic. Inside, actually just a slightly better view there, you can see that manifold really nicely. I think that's a really nice shot actually, with the bonnet up, where you can see the graphics, see the engine cover, everything looks really good. Inside, you've got these lovely sort of deep bolstered bucket seats, which were not Recaro's. I actually have sat in the car like this. I've actually test drove one of these cars, came sorry, close to buying one of these in diamond white many, many, many years ago, but I couldn't afford the insurance. And once I got a quote, that was the end of my dream as a young man of owning one of these cars. But the seats is one thing I'll never forget. Sitting in the seats of that car, they felt absolutely amazing. And these seats here look just like the real thing. Now, this is obviously plastic, what have you, but the shape is absolutely spot on, because these seats only came in the RS1600i. And you can see here just how deep the buckets are on these seats. They had the same pattern in the back seats, which is a little bit hard to get on film, but this model's got that same accurate kind of detail. Otherwise, inside it's virtually identical to the other Sunstar models, but I definitely have to give props to Sunstar. Instead of just recycling the XR3i seats, in this car, this model, they actually put in correct seats, which look just like the RS1600i seats. Plus, you've got the correct steering wheel, I believe, as well for these cars, although most of them optioned up for a rather fetching RS 4-spoke steering wheel, which had a big round centre boss. And I'm pretty sure most RS1600i's had that steering wheel, but I think it was an option, if I remember correctly. But otherwise, the interior looks really smart. On this one, the seats actually tilt back, which is really cool. So You can flip your seats right back. Imagine you're going on a shopping trip and just flip your seats back, which is really good. Open up the tailgate, and again you can see this one's also got full-size spare wheel. But I think, you know, the level of detail they've gone to is really good, because they didn't have to make the seats foldable, but they have done, which, you know, for a model of this kind of price bracket is really good. But there's lots of little details in there. I mean, you know, there are things that they could improve on. I think, you know, colouring in things like the dashboard vents and speaker vents, they've done some of them, but not quite everything. But overall, I think it's actually really good. Sunstar, you know, is a good brand. I've got quite a few Sunstar models. I think the overall quality is really nice of these cars. But this being a very rare car in real life, an RS1600i, they are now going for absolutely ridiculous money. I cannot believe I could have bought one of these cars which was in absolutely mint condition for the princely sum of £1,500. Unfortunately, the insurance was more than the price of the car at the time. The insurance was over £2,500. I looked at the car, I was so close to putting a deposit on it, got a quote, and at that sort of money, you know, being a student, I could afford the car. I couldn't afford the insurance at £2,500. I really wish I'd bought one when I was able to, because now they're so expensive. I mean, these things can go for anything from £10,000 for a pretty rubbish one that's going to need restoration, anything up to £40,000-£50,000. I've seen one for sale at £65,000, which I thought was a joke, to be honest, that sort of money, because I know it's a desirable car nowadays, but that kind of money is just, you know, on another planet really. But this is a great model. If you're into collecting these Fords, I think an RS1600i is definitely something you want to have in your collection. These are out of production now. You can get them because they made them in quite good numbers, so there's lots of them around. I'm sure you can find second-hand ones or new old stock that have been sitting in boxes on shelves. And you know, you've got a good variety of colors available, so you can kind of choose what you want. If you want a black one, or you want a grey one, or you want a blue one, I think they all look fantastic. Personally, I really like the red. I think the red just makes the graphics pop. I really love the graphics on the bonnet, down the side. I think all these little features of it really make it stand out. So, you know, the detail on this model is great. I mean, you can have a look all the way around, and I don't think there's many things you can... What's happened to this? There we go. I don't think there's many things you could really point the finger at and say are inaccurate. I think one of the most important things about any die-cast model, apart from sort of how good the detail is just the overall shape. Because you get a lot of models where the proportions of the car are wrong. It looks a bit just sort of like what somebody's interpretation of what that car looked like. But I think these Sunstar ones, whatever the car, they always seem to get the proportions of the car absolutely spot on. The angles of the windscreen, the shape of the doors, wheel arches, everything seems to be really good on these models. That's why I'd certainly recommend picking up anything really made by Sunstar. I think they're all quite good cars. Definitely value for money when you start looking at the really expensive models. These are really, really good, really well priced for what they offer you. This is one of my favourite Escort models. I've got obviously many others, as you'll know if you've watched any of the other videos. I think of all the Escort models I've got, this is probably my second favourite, next to my Otto White RS Turbo Series 2. That's definitely my favourite Escort model. But I have got a couple of Escort Cosworths, so I will be reviewing those in time. I think for the Mark III Escorts, this is almost the last video I'll do on these cars. I have got another video coming up. I've actually got a pair of RS Turbos, Series 1 RS Turbos. I've got the black Princess Diana version one, if you've ever heard of that car. And I've also got a standard white one. So I'm going to do a double review on those soon, comparing both models, see what you think of those. But again, if you like what you see here and you want to see more, just click the link, subscribe, whatever this YouTube stuff means that you want to do, and you'll be sure to see some more videos from me. Thank you. Bye.